as usual, this video is clipped short for YouTube. If you want to see the entirety of the conversation, you're going to have to go to one of my other platforms. The best place to go is AllisonMorrow.locals.com, where you can submit questions ahead of time for interviews and go direct with the people who come on my channel. You also get exclusive content like a weekly editorial board meeting. Join my editorial board, and you give me feedback from the week before and story ideas or interview guest ideas for the week ahead. But whatever you do, don't stay here on YouTube entirely. If you want to know the full truth about what's going on around us, you got to go somewhere else. I think, throughout this conversation, I've been trying to put myself in your shoes, just trying to understand like what I would feel like if the situation were reversed. And
I'll tell you.
Say that again.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you want me to put you in my shoes?
Sure.
Okay. Imagine that there are surface to air. Imagine that Russia put surface to air rockets that can take ballistic rockets next to your in Canada and in Mexico and in Cuba. Okay. Imagine that we're actively funding through our NGOs, various different organizations in the US to try and get you overthrown, your president, any president overthrown. Imagine that we're funding different opposition parties and bloggers, okay, to make sure that we ensure that your population hates your president, no matter who he is. All right. Imagine that we have groups of people like the Council on Foreign Relations, but the Russian version of it. Imagine we're putting out documents on the best way to destroy the U.S., the best way to get people to fight each other. Imagine our country names you an enemy legally. Okay. Imagine that we're putting biolabs on your borders, obviously dismissing that they exist, but then, finding out that they're actually real. Imagine that. I'd expect every gun-loving patriotic American to build up as much weapons and ammo that they could possibly have in their homes, waiting to defend their country, itching to defend their country. I'd expect the American government to act swiftly, not wait 8 years for this situation to get out of control. I'd expect them to do this instantly because I understand the American government. I understand American power. That's me putting you in my shoes. That's me putting you in the shoes of every single Russian that is here, that has that has enough understanding of geopolitics and history, especially their own history. Because unlike the US, we did suffer the most in World War II. We had with 27 million plus or minus casualties. Every single family here knows somebody in their family who fought, who died, who's a hero, who has medals, etc., etc. Everyone suffered. So imagine that as a threat. Imagine Russia doing this to the US. That's putting you in and at the same time, imagine that Russia's spreading misinformation about your country and getting all of your trade partners who benefit from trading with you, like Germany, for example, and European Union. Imagine turning your partners against you, like Canada, who has, Canadian trade with the US is like 60-40, but for the US, it's like a minuscule blip, but you still have NAFTA, et cetera. Imagine us ensuring that Canada is no longer your trade partner by lying every single moment we have. Now, do you understand the shoes that we're in? This is legitimate. These are the shoes that Russians are in.
And can I ask you, since you brought up sanctions and everything, there were a couple questions from people that came in on locals, like about prices of things, gasoline, how other sanctions affected you all. Do you mind real quickly going through that so that people have a better understanding?
Sure. Well, first off, I think COVID affected our prices a lot more than the current situation, but it just technically started. It's only been a couple of weeks. So it's a bit early. But as far as gasoline or petrol, depending on where you're from, before the conflict, it was around 50 rubles a liter, which, like 70 cents per liter times 3.75 gives you a gallon. It hasn't changed. It was between 47 and 54, depending on the octane and whether it's gas or diesel. It's still 47 to 54. It hasn't budged, hasn't moved. In fact, it moved the most during right towards the end of COVID. Actually, well, COVID hasn't ended yet. I don't think it'll ever end. But yeah, gas prices haven't gone up. As far as other prices, well, it's difficult to say that because it's too early, and because, to be quite honest with you, COVID has had a big impact on prices. So I can't tell what's affected prices for now. As far as the economy goes, I mean, this is the weird part about the way Russia is, the way Russians are. If we feel that we're being attacked and we feel that it's unfair, we'll eat dirt just to prove you're wrong. But the good thing is, we can't be isolated like Cuba or like other small countries. We can feed ourselves, and we've shown that. We were the number one top wheat export recently. We have our own energy supplies. We have our own food. We have our own gas. We have our own meats, vegetables, and fruits. We have our own technology. We have our own lots of vehicle manufacturing facilities and plants and parts manufacturers. We, those companies that are leaving, they have to really understand that leaving a market's easy, coming back is difficult. You're leaving a vacuum for your competition. Some companies are leaving, some companies are not. The French are saying actively, for the past week, they've been saying, don't leave. This is only temporary. Please don't go. The French understand the potential that they how much they can lose. And I'm talking about like trading bodies in France who are actively asking their companies like Auchan, for example, not to leave. This actually will kickstart our industries. This will actually help us in the long run. In the short term, it's going to be painful for sure. Oh yeah. But the bank, like the previous crisis in 2014, after that, after we got wind that, we might be getting cut off from SWIFT, we created our own internal SWIFT. Problem solved. Then when we started getting this idea that we're going to be cut off from our internet, we created our own internet. In case that happens, we flip a switch and that's it. All our businesses, everything is working internally. With our aviation, we're going to have problems. But the interesting part is they want to get their planes back because they're on lease. But our planes are not allowed to fly to Europe. So they're going to have to get their crews, like 500 somewhat crews, to fly the planes back. But if they get those planes, they can't fly because European planes aren't allowed to fly in Russia. So they can't really get their planes back. We can fly them, but we can't repair them. But what's going to happen is that our industries that exist, like Sukhoi, like Tupolev, for example, and those planes are flying, they're going to, brush the dust off and start manufacturing. So in the long run, this will actually help us. And this will damage the trade that we have with other nations, for sure, mostly in Europe and in US and Canada, for sure. But this is only going to help us in the long run. This is something that Western leaders don't understand, unfortunately for them and unfortunately for their business. Russia is not a country that can be isolated or sanctioned, especially when people are saying, and there are Russians who are going, the whole world is turned against us. Not really. Europe and people in Europe are divided. Governments are not. Some governments are forced to make that decision. Then it's Canada and the US. Mexico doesn't want to sanction us. Turkey is not sanctioning us. Africa is quiet. Middle East is quiet. Asia hasn't said anything. In fact, we've made contracts with Pakistan for gas and wheat. India is buying our gas, I believe, in oil. China is buying even more. And China is the one that manufactures everything. The interesting idea is, and this is, I don't think this is something that would happen in the States, but when all the different software companies started, saying that they were going to be leaving, there were ideas in the government to make piracy legal so that we just torrent it and no one gets any kind of fines or anything. Just, no, they're leaving, fine. Take it legally, no problem. Like I said, we're prepared to eat dirt to prove you wrong, but it's not going to come to that because there are still businesses that operate here, Western businesses there are people that understand that all this cancel culture is trying to cancel an entire nation, because during all the different NATO invasions, Americans overseas kept their jobs. Other people from other countries that participated in the wars kept their jobs. No one was saying, oh, why is this dish that's called poutine or poutine in Quebec? Why is it called poutine? Is it Russian? No, it's a Quebec dish and it's a Canadian food cheese fries and gravy. But there are people who are naming it because it sounds like it's the president of Russia. There's a museum in Wisconsin that's not showing Russian mustard. Okay, well now I know there's a museum of mustard in Wisconsin, but that's about it. You know, there are people being fired from F1 teams, from orchestras, just because they're Russian. Like, your audience must understand this. You're just pissing us off even more. Literally. We see how unfair that is. We see how hypocritical that is when you're firing people who have nothing to do with this. And you're even turning some of our liberals into patriots because they see what's happening and they're like, these people have nothing to do. They're against this. Yet you're firing them. You're either painting their cars. You're destroying their assets. Thank you, I guess.
Don't forget, you can support my work and my ability to bring on guests like Stan by going to AllisonWinePromo.com. That's Allison with 1L winepromo.com. And you get 50% off my favorite Malbecs from Argentina, some from very old vineyards and some from very high altitude vineyards. And you also get 50% off shipping. So these are wines that use no flavoring, no filtering, no dyes, and no excess chemicals. And they're also just really good. So go to AllisonWinePromo.com and support my work there. Or if you want a piping hot cup of coffee for some of the most intense conversations that are happening right now about geopolitics, then go to TwinEngineCoffee.com/Allison, TwinEngineCoffee.com/Allison. These are high altitude Nicaraguan roasts, and they have a wide variety of them. There's also a Caturra tea, which is tea made from coffee fruit. It's very good. I cold brew mine for 24 hours, actually, and you can see it right here. But whatever you drink, wine or coffee, don't forget to go check out my sponsors and support free speech wherever you are.